Hi, it's Mike Stevenson here. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the new Logic App Standard test framework that Wagner's just released the preview for public preview. Um, I'm going to treat this like an unboxing video. So we're going to have, I've not really been through any of these articles before. I had a go early on in the private preview, gave the team some feedback, but it's been a while since I've done any Logic App development. So I think it probably puts me in a really good position. So somebody who's not really using this day in and day out at the minute, let's see how hard it is to get up and running and see how we set this up. So I'm going to work through this article, and the first thing that I would note is I think there's two articles here. We've got the workflow definition and the workflow run. So I haven't read through them in low level detail yet, but my basic understanding is there's two different ways we can create a test. One from the definition itself, and then one from an actual run that we've previously ran. So I'll probably do these as two separate videos. So we'll start on this one at the top here, and we'll sort of have a quick read through what this is about. So we've got some info at the top here about the importance of unit testing. So we can see over here we've got reasons why we should be doing it. So if we scroll a little bit further down, we've got some of the prerequisites here. So one of the things I've done is I've actually went through this article here and set a brand new project up. So with the Logic App workspace, and just put a vanilla Logic App in that we'll have a look at a little bit later on. So we'll use that in this demo. So let's have a look at limitations down here. So there's a couple of things we need to be aware of. So this only supports C# for creating Logic App tests. So that's a limitation for me. That's not a really big issue for me, because I think most of the projects I've ever done with Logic Apps always use C# anyway. I'm sure there'll be other people who don't, but I don't really view that for most people as a major issue. So this release doesn't support non-mocked actions. So I think that's a really interesting point. And I think if we try to understand what that means, if we've got actions in the workflow, there's going to be two types, I assume. So we're going to have things like the compose shape and the variable shape that are not relevant really for mocking. You're not going to change what they do. The mocking's really going to apply when the workflow calls out to external systems. And so for me, things like the HTTP actions are a really good example there. So we're going to mock what that action does. And my understanding is the test framework will just kind of capture the call from the workflow to the HTTP action in that case, and do something locally with it, so we don't really call the third-party service. So make sure all actions and execution are mocked. That's fine. So this release doesn't support the following type of actions. So things like integration accounts, mapper, custom code, XML, Liquid, and EDI. So I think this is going to be the main blocker, and probably why this will be in preview till those features come out. I think most real-world Logic apps probably are going to use a lot of those kind of actions, particularly for the people who are really going to care about the test framework. So for me, it's a public preview now, but there's some kind of things that are really going to block you being able to do this in the real world for the time being. So we'll look forward to future releases where these kind of come out. So basic concept, so we know what a unit test is already, particularly if you've seen any of my previous videos. So it's going to be a workflow that injects mock objects, and we can basically do some testing. And then we've got this concept of a mockable action. So that's an action, we said before, dependent on an external service. And we're going to convert these from a unit test perspective to kind of inject some code to fake the response. Okay, so if we go a bit further down than here, so we're looking now at our unit test definition, our workflow definition. So we said earlier we're going to do the unit test from a workflow. So I've got my Visual Studio project, we'll look at it in a moment. Right, so we open the designer and we should see a create test button. So here's my excuse me, here's my Logic App workspace, and I've got this workflow I've already pre-created. So if we go open designer, And you can see I've done a really basic logic app so far. So I think what we'll have to do is put a mockable action in here. So I've already, before the video, I've already just checked this runs okay. So we'll put an HTTP action in here, and let's just make it call. So we'll do a get request on Google, I guess. And I think we can probably just leave it at that, I'm going to guess. So I'm going to put, give it a name as well. Okay, so if we save that, so let's, I think what we might do as well, actually, we'll just do a quick update here. And we're going to do a quick test of this before we start playing around with the unit test stuff. So I don't know if you saw there, I'm going to put a message in for my compose shape, and the response will include that plus the response from Google. So if we F5 that, so we can see the function runtime spins up. Okay, now in my browser over here, I did have the URL before, so I should be able to just run this. Okay, so we can see here, the problem I've got is I've got the wrong URL for Google, so we're getting a moved response. So if we go and open the designer again, there we go. So there's our response, and there's all the HTML from Google. So we know that's working okay. So I'm going to disconnect from the runtime now. I'm just going to shut a couple of these windows down just so there's no confusion here. So the article basically said to us, so click this button at the top here. So that's going to be this button up here. So we'll give it a name, so we'll call it guess that would be a good name for it maybe. Okay, so there's some things started happening here when we did that. So over on the left here, you notice we've got a new test project got created. We've got a folder here. We've got a C# project and some classes over here. So we'll have a little bit of a nose at what they look like before we go back. So test executor. So I'm guessing this is a root class representing the logic app itself. So that looks like it's just going to be doing some configuration setup. So I'm going to guess we'll probably have to let the test project think about things like the host settings and stuff like that. Yeah, so here I remember this from the original framework that I worked on, where we're going to pass in the workflow.json and the connections and stuff like that. And then I'm assuming there'll be some code in here. So I'm guessing that'll be a bit of detail about the logic app itself, and then the example one. Yes, I think it's just representing the overall structure for the workflow. Here we've got the class that looks like it'll have the code for the execution, so we'll have a look at that more in a minute. And then here we've got some mock outputs. So I think this looks like it represents some of those actions, I think. So this one's going to be that trigger, and then that's the HTTP action from Google. So let's have a quick look at the rest of the article now and see what it's telling us here. So provide a name for the unit tests. We get our structure. So I think we saw these classes here. We've got the overall solution. These are the mock classes we've just been looking at. Bit of info down here about the structure, which is good. So if we review the unit test in C#, right, so here, this is really about the structure of the test executor class. Oh, sorry, the unit test class. This is going to be this class here. So we can see that. So we've got that setup method. Yeah. Right, so I think this section here is going to be good. So sample test methods. So our method shows you how to use static mock data to test your workflow. Set the properties on the mocked object. Right, so if we go back here, so I think what this basically means is that we can, if we have a look here, we can have a look at how we're going to configure these actions. So one of the things that I quite like in this, we've got this arrange, act, assert type pattern. So if you notice here, and then I think they're calling it prepare up here. So I think what we'll do, if we maybe take the action here, so I guess we can almost like uncomment these lines here. So I think what we're really doing is we're sort of supplying some info that would go in the mocked action. Right, so this really is going to map to the name in the workflow. Now, I think one of the things we'll try in a little bit that'll be really interesting is if we do something like change the name of that action, how does that impact these tests? So maybe do we have to actually update the test manually, or does it regenerate it and that kind of thing? I'm assuming we'll have to update manually because we're probably going to modify these tests as we go through. Okay, so we'll then create the response there, which is good. Right, so dynamic mock data. So I think when we take static mock data and dynamic, I think this is really where we would sort of provide specific values that were static. So if we're dynamic, so option 1, option 2. Right, so I think this looks like we've just got various options to inject dynamic data in here from the looks of it. So a good example is option 2. You can see I'm just building an object that I guess I could maybe take something from an external data source or a file in my solution and inject in the right data I need for this test case. Okay, so I guess for me the question now is how do we run this test? So let's have a look what else we've got. So we've got sample 1, sample 2. So this is obviously another test it's generated, so we're probably going to modify these. Okay, interesting. So maybe we missed a trick a little bit earlier. So yes, this is the dynamic example. So really what we've got here is I think here we can sort of dynamically inject in different data, I think. So I think the next question is running these tests. So I've got test widget from C# dev kit installed on here somewhere. Okay, so one of the little bits I had to troubleshoot there, just had a little bit of a look at, is I couldn't get my tests to show up in here after the code was generated. So what I ended up doing, I've been fiddling around a couple of different ways of doing this. Just before I didn't want to waste too much time on the video. So the easy way, if you notice, was in my path down here. I've got a path to the test project, and then I could just do a .NET test command, and you can see it's kind of going through. It builds the code, and then you can see it runs my 2 tests here. So that I didn't really do any changes at all. That works absolutely fine. So I can see my tests executed successfully. One of the things that I think though is that in the article, if we bring that back over, I think it'd be really great to see Microsoft update the documentation to actually show kind of how you can run the test, because we've gone through the code here, but I think there's a bit of an assumption you already know how you're going to run the test, and I think some of the developers coming in may have got different ways of doing this, and I think it'd be just good to like flush that out in the documentation. Now, what I did do, I found if I actually restarted Visual Studio Code, it actually opens up in the designer here. So I'd had been doing this refresh a few times, and it was constantly giving me this error message saying it couldn't find any tests and it was failing to build and stuff. But the minute I restarted VS Code, this kind of came up fine. So I'm gonna just have a go here. So this is part of comes from C# Dev Kit. So if anybody's not familiar, you kind of where are we? So down here you want the C# Dev Kit extension. There are a couple of other Test Explorer type extensions that you might want to think about. So this bit, and again, I think this isn't really covered. Yeah, I think it's not really covered in this article. I think if you do want to learn a bit more about this, I will just do a shout out for the integration playbook. So I think the test and stuff from the old project, we've got some how-tos in here. So we've got things like how to run a test with a Test Explorer, which is, I think it's the older version of the Test Explorer, and I think there's how to run the tests, how to debug them. I think the C# Dev Kit, I think, is in one of these videos as well, so it might be worth checking that out if you're not as familiar. But basically, because I've got C# Dev Kit installed, which isn't really in the prerequisites for the article, the minute I've restarted VS Code, these load up. So we'll just give these a quick run now, and we'll see what happens. I think one of the bits when you run them off the command line, it's not always easy to kind of see what's going on behind the scenes. So here I can come in and I can map it to the test and stuff like that. Now I think the next thing we'll give it a shot at doing is we'll see if we can kind of step through these tests here. So see what we got. So we'll run it with a debug option. So sorry, that's quite funny there. I hadn't realised I haven't changed the shortcut key on Camtasia, so when you F10 it ends the video, which is a bit annoying. But we're back here now, so we'll just step through, step over some of these things. So you can see we're executing the test here. In this, so previously we've been in this prepare stage, so we've been setting up our mocks. We're then going to do the act stage, so what we got, test mock definitions. So I think we're just preparing all the mocks for the execution. So if we step over that, and then here the test executor, we're going to create and run the workflow. So I think we'll step into that. So that should jump into that test executor class. So this is where we're going to, I think it's kind of like looking at the file structure of the Logic App project. So it's going to get your workflow. So we can see here we've got the name of the workflow gets passed in, the name of the Logic App. We're going to grab the files for connections.json and stuff like that. And then here we're going to return the test executor. So that'll basically be pre-set up, ready to run. And then if we step into the, so that one's the run workflow async is going to execute the workflow. So I don't know what we would see kind of in this debug console maybe. Yeah, we'll go back for a minute. So here we're doing the assertions. So we've got the test run result. So you can see the properties on here. So it tells me what the result of the workflow was, what the trigger status and the times and stuff. So that's really stuff from the run history. And then if we check the next one, we're basically testing the workflow status. So we expect it to be succeeded, and then what was the actual value. Now it'd be interesting to know here, I guess, outputs. So it'd be interesting to know how we get the output value from the workflow. So that might be something I'll look at in another video. So if I wanted to test in my workflow, when we ran it, we returned like the message from Google. So it'll be interesting to know how we can test what the value that came out the workflow was. I'm sure there's probably a way to do that, but that'll be something we can kind of fiddle around with a bit. Okay, so now if I look over in the folder structure here, we do also have that test results folder that's showing up now. It doesn't really look like there's anything in there that I can see. I'm just going to check on the file system. Yeah, Yeah, that looks empty at the minute. So maybe there's something in there in the future that we might want to look at. I guess that would be things like the standard test results, details that you might want to view, or maybe I think one of the things that's quite interesting here as well is like we're kind of making some big assumptions about what the workflow did. So we ran it and then we test a few things here. So I think what I would be wanting to do was check some of the assertions. You know, if you look at the videos we did in the old framework, where we're doing a lot of parsing of the run history to see did all these different actions work. So for me, this is where I'll probably think about, can I, you know, in this test run, can I access, well, I guess it looks like we've got some options here. So cert workflow run, is that even a, I mean, I think that's just the AI's come up with some magic of what we should put in the code here. I don't think it does it actually have anything like that. We'll have a look at that and see if there's any other ways we can do this. But I really want to do some assumptions and assertions about what the workflow actually did and test which shapes ran. I think that's just the AI making a guess at what the code should look like. So it might be a good product feature for the team, but it doesn't look like it's covered in that article anyway. So hopefully that video's a little bit raw, but it's meant to be an unboxing video. It's the first time I've ran these tests, so the problems, if I recap, I had just setting up the vanilla project at the start. Before the video, I'd missed installing the latest .NET Framework version on this machine, so I had to update that. I was getting, I'll put a blog post about the error I was getting, but I think it was interesting that the Logic app project itself needed .NET 9, but I think looking at this one, it's this test project's actually .NET 6, so I'm assuming that'll get updated at some point. And then the other problem I had was actually executing the tests, and that was just really a case of restarting VS Code. So really, you know, in that case, for me, you know, I didn't really have to jump through many hoops here at all. You know, we had our project, our Logic app up and running. We generated the code for the test. It pretty much ran first time once I worked out how to get the test explorer to load. The test was successful. And we're good to go, I think, from there. So I think it's now just a case of, you know, if you go from 0 to hero, you get it up and running really quickly. It's now exploring what the different things we can do with the mock-in and the different things we can do with the assertions to make sure the tests are running as expected. So I think, in my opinion, great first release on this. And I think I'd be really keen to maybe have a chat with Wagner about some of the other things we can do with this that I might do. I might see if Wagner fancies doing a YouTube video on that, and we can maybe do it together. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'll do another one on the other side of this feature, doing it from the run history. Thank you for joining us. Take care.